Rama, Rama, Hari, 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 Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Rama, Rama, Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Rama, Hari, Rama, Rama, Hari, 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 Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Rama, Hari, Rama. Rama, Rama, Hari, Hari. Devotees, Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to the continuation of our Vaishnava Etiquette seminar. And we only have 2 weeks, so we're going to have to move along a little bit more than we have been doing. 2 weeks of weekdays, so 10 days. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestad Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Welcome. Okay, devotees, yes, we got to move on a little bit more. I mean, it'd be nice to have an extra month or a month more, but we don't have. So we're still in part 2, temple etiquette, and we're at point G, cleanliness and hygiene. Let's just have a look at what they say in the manual, and then I'll have a look at my notes to see if there's some additional points, which I think there may be. So, okay, I guess you can all see it. As mentioned earlier, fresh clothes must be worn in the temple. Anyway, I think that means in the morning, like every day. It's not that every time you go into the temple room, you have to be wearing clean clothes. Then, yes, after taking prasadam, well, the whole place must be cleaned, really, not just where your plate was sitting. Yeah, because anyway, it's just kind of obvious that by eating, the place where we eat becomes contaminated and shouldn't step over the area. Okay. We shouldn't enter the temple room without having washed our hands and feet after eating. Yeah, certainly. I mean, as soon as you finish eating, you should wash your hands and your mouth. Feet, if possible, if they've got socks on, anyway, we're practical. But hands and mouth, definitely. One should enter the temple with clean hands and feet. Yeah, as much as possible. One should take bath after passing stool, and only then basically do anything, including entering the temple room. Then, this is a bit of a technical thing, but it's a point. The basic point is, after associating with a dead body, particularly touching or really coming close, then it's good to have a bath and change clothes, actually. One shouldn't pass air, etc., in the temple. Yes. One should avoid putting one's fingers in one's mouth, ears or nose, in general, including while in the temple. And if somehow you do, should wash your hands. If you want to try a rather unusual little experiment, if you haven't tried it before, with a finger, rub a finger against your teeth for 5 seconds, and then smell your finger. Ooh, Krishna. Oh yeah. Finger, the mouth is, I think, second dirtiest place in the body. Then some things about ladies, and I think these things are well known. Anyway, this is for the ladies, so you can have a look through there, but I assume you're familiar with these things. Anyway, I assume you're familiar with these things, ladies. Right? I assume, so it's okay. So let me now just have a look at my own notes here. Here is something from Srila Prabhupada. Cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. There are 2 kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. External cleanliness means taking a bath, but for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This process cleans the accumulated dust of past karma from the mind. And just an interesting little point, there's a famous old saying in English, cleanliness is next to godliness. Devotees have told me that, very senior devotees have told me that they were present with Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said, cleanliness is godliness. But at the very least, he subscribed to the idea, he accepted the saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. It's just a really important part of being Krishna conscious. And for example, if you've ever got up in the morning but not been able to take a bath somehow, and so maybe you've started chanting your rounds, but you just, you're really not clean. You've probably noticed that the chanting just doesn't penetrate the way it does after you've had a nice bath and, like that. Yeah. I mean, it's not something which would happen very often, but it's happened to me on a few occasions over the years. It makes a big difference. And the difference is the cleanliness or lack of. Here is something from the purport of Bhagavad Gita chapter 16 verses 1 to 3. Shocham means cleanliness, not only in mind and body, but in one's dealings also. It is especially meant for the mercantile people who should not deal in the black market. In other words, part of internal cleanliness is being honest. This is now Bhagavad Gita. This is the verse, chapter 16, verse 7. Pravritam cha navritam cha janana vidurasura na shocham na pichacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness, nor proper behavior, nor truth is found in them. And here is Bhagavad Gita chapter 17, verse 14. This is interesting. Austerity of the body consists in worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmins, the spiritual master, and superiors like the father and mother, and in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. So these are all like standard foundational austerities of the body, because we also are meant to have some austerity in our lives. Austerity is the wealth of the Brahmins. If we, like we have our regulative principles, they're austerities. Chanting 16 rounds. Of course, once you get into it, it's just really nice. But in a certain sense, people could say it's an austerity because it takes a couple of hours and like this. So, then an interesting little point. This is from Chaitanya Mangala, the Sutra Kanda chapter 2. Murari Gupta speaking to Damodar Pandit. In Satya Yuga, the scriptures say that Dharma has 4 limbs: mercy, cleanliness, austerity, and truthfulness. Treta Yuga has 3 qualities: mercy, cleanliness, and truthfulness. So austerity is gone. Dwapara Yuga has 2, cleanliness and truthfulness. So mercy has gone and austerity was already gone. Cleanliness and truthfulness. Kali Yuga has 1, truthfulness. That's interesting. That how the good qualities are lost from yuga to yuga. So now we go on to general behavior. General behavior. Okay, let me just get my notes out here. General behavior. Okay, so mainly we're just going to focus on what it's said here. I haven't really made any extra points. So first thing, A, we should conduct ourselves being mindful that we're representing Guru and Krishna, so that when people see us, they'll appreciate that these are good people. And how is it they're good people? Because they're Krishna-conscious people. Then devotees should not wear expensive and flashy-looking jewelry, wristwatches, etc. Jewelry for women must be worn with careful moderation, if at all. Hari Bol, you can see this was written by a brahmachari. Yes. From India. Oh, yes. And men should preferably avoid all jewelry, like gold chains, bracelets, etc. I once had a kavacha, where my grandparents died and gave me a little money, not a lot, but something. So I decided to get a gold kavacha in India filled with something auspicious, and then a gold chain. And I did. And Giriraj Maharaj saw it and told me, you know, it would be better if you didn't wear that. So I think I gave it away to someone. Yes, C, we should avoid using leather things. I mean, as much as possible, that's true. It's really true. If you are criticized or offended, you shouldn't sort of, get agitated and disturbed. Keep cool. E, we should avoid getting cheated too, but we should avoid getting involved in arguments, quarrels. And we have to be careful about our dealings with the opposite sex. That has to be done in responsible ways. And G, we should just be courteous and nice with ordinary people. Yeah, and you see this little picture? The devotee is going between two devotees. So he's put his hand forward, and so the one devotee, both perhaps, can lift their legs away so he doesn't have to bump through. This is how it's done. Okay, so I didn't make any notes about that because I thought it was sort of covered quite nicely. But now, attending class, let's just see, I've got some notes here, on attending class, some interesting points. Okay, first of all, let's have a look through the manual, what it says about attending class. Yes, well, anyway, you should be attentive, don't fall asleep. Goes without saying. I mentioned an incident the other day, you remember, from the good old days. Devotee waking up. One time, one of our ISKCON, at that time gurus, was giving class on a big Vyasasan. And a devotee was fanning him. In those days we did things like that. Standing like here, somewhere here, fanning. And the devotee's fanning and falling asleep. Eventually the devotee's fanning and fell asleep into the lap of the guru and went sort of bouncing off to the floor. some stories, I tell you what. So yeah, if you're feeling sleepy, stand up. Move to the side, stand up. And we've already discussed some things about sitting in the temple. We won't go back over those. And this is good. One should avoid moving in and out of the temple or the room where the discourse is taking place, because it causes disturbance. Parents must control their children. You know what Srila Prabhupada had mothers do when their child was, because children are children, but still it's a disturbance if they start crying and, creating a little bit of a scene. So Prabhupada would have the ladies the mothers put their hands on the child's mouth. Yeah, and then take the child out. Questions can be asked in a humble spirit. And we've got a couple of points here. Let's have a look. Yeah, we've got some points here. Now, here's an interesting point. In the current day Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, verse 18, I will not ask who knows that verse, but if you don't, it'd be a good idea, because it's really important. Nashta prayesh abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyutama shloke bhaktya bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavata and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So it's interesting to note that in the translation right at the beginning, the way Prabhupada's translated it is by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam. If you referred back to one of the old, and I mean really quite old, like the first printing of the first canto, you would see the translation is as follows: by regularly hearing the Bhagavatam and rendering service unto the pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada, well, when the devotees went back through the recordings of Prabhupada's dictation, they found that he did not say by regularly hearing the Bhagavatam. He said by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam. So actually, I mean, it's good to read the Bhagavatam and like that, but it's also very good. I mean, we should attend the actual classes. And one time in Mumbai, some guests complained to Srila Prabhupada that when this one particular devotee gives class, all he does is read the book from the beginning of the class till the end of the class. Doesn't say anything. He just reads the book. So they complained to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada spoke to the devotee. And the devotee said, but Prabhupada, it's, you are the authority. So it's best if they just hear from you. And Prabhupada replied that no, the people want to hear your realizations, and Bhagavatam class is an opportunity for you to speak your realizations. So you should do that. That's interesting, isn't it? Otherwise, we could all just sit there and just read what Prabhupada said and say, well, Prabhupada's the great authority. Here's something from Satsvarup Maharaj. A devotee once told Srila Prabhupada that many disciples slept during classes, and Srila Prabhupada replied that he knew. He said his disciples were for advanced students. Srila Prabhupada gave untiringly as the loving instructor, but it was up to his disciples to benefit. I confess that I was one of those who sometimes slept in Srimad Bhagavatam class. Once I even asked Srila Prabhupada what to do about my sad plight. At first he replied by making a joke. He said, there's an atheistic joke in India. Srimad Bhagavatam is a sure cure for insomnia. When Srila Prabhupada said this, I laughed, but I didn't want it to be true of me. Sometimes when Prabhupada found a devotee sleeping in his class, he would tell him to stand up and go to the rear. Srimad Bhagavatam class was for his advanced students, but he kept giving us chances to become more advanced. Okay. Devotees have testified how in a large audience, when Prabhupada said distribute books, they took it to heart and formed their lives on that order. Many have testified that they found Prabhupada looked at them and spoke especially to them in his lecture, even though they knew he was speaking to everyone else as well. And I personally had an experience in a darshan of Srila Prabhupada's, and I was sitting close to Prabhupada. I was, say, from here to one of these light stands, or maybe an extra foot away, but not more than that. And in this darshan, a devotee asked Prabhupada, the essence was, are there any special circumstances when a devotee could eat meat? Then Srila Prabhupada looked at me. He looked at me and said, a devotee would rather die. I'll never forget that. Okay, so next is J, attending arati. Alrighty, just a sec, let me get my notes out. Attending arati. Okay, so let's have a look at what our manual says. Arati is also called niranjana or drishti, which means waving auspicious items before a person in order to dispel inauspicious influences or elements as a means of protection. Well, anyway, okay. I don't know if that's a very good translation of Niranjan, or drishti just means to be seen. The various items offered, They're all representatives of the material elements in pure forms and the corresponding sense objects. And they're auspicious and purifying. And then we have a quote here. Oh, we have a couple of quotes. There must be regular Mangal Arati in the temple during the early morning, an hour and a half before the sun rises. Well, you know, about a week before I joined the temple in London, they did not have Mangal Arati at 4:30. When I joined the temple, it was 4:30. But they every day would calculate. They would calculate. So it was like a minute different every day. Yeah. And in England in the summer, sun rises really early. And in England in the winter, sun rises like 7:30 or something. Anyway, so then Prabhupada quotes Nectar of Devotion. In the Skanda Purana, there's the following description of the result of seeing Arati of the deity. If someone sees the face of the Lord while Arati is going on, he can be relieved of all sinful reactions coming from many, many thousands and millions of years past. He's even excused from the killing of a Brahmin or similar prohibited activities. I mean, not to encourage anyone to do any, really bad prohibited activities and then zip into Arati and Haribol. All is well. So, Mangal Arati is particularly auspicious. Mangal meaning auspicious, actually. And there is, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but there is a Prabhupada said that a devotee asked Prabhupada, is there any good, you could say like excuse or reason, acceptable reason for not attending Mangal Arati? And they say that Prabhupada said, yes, death. If you get the idea. So, and this is interesting. Just at the end of this little section, Prabhupada, or not Prabhupada, but our compilers, quote the translation of the 9th verse of Gauravastikam. We sing 8 verses, concluding with Yasya Prasadad Bhagavat Prasado. You know that verse. It's the 8th verse, but there's a 9th verse. As is the case in many prayers, that at the end there's like some sort of phalastuti, some sort of prayer explaining what result you'll get by doing whatever the prayer, the song has been talking about. So here, this is the translation of the 9th verse of Gauravastikam, which we sing at Mangal Arati. One who with great care and attention loudly recites this beautiful prayer to the spiritual master during the Brahma Muhurta obtains direct service to Krishna, the Lord of Vrindavan, at the time of his death. Let's just have a look, see? Yes, I have a couple of notes here. I'll mention this one. Tamal Krishna Goswami was trying to arrange for permissions from the different departments of the city council in Mumbai for the construction of our Juhu temple. And, these people can be extremely difficult, particularly if you're a foreigner, and particularly if you don't give them money. So one day, he went to see a whole number of these people, and they all refused whatever they were meant to give permission for. And he went back to the temple in Juhu, and Arati was going on, and Prabhupada was in the Arati. And he was just feeling sort of depressed. So he just stood there in the Arati and didn't get into it much. At the end, Srila Prabhupada said, even if the city authorities do not give permission, still you must dance in the kirtan. Right. So, Arati is mentioned in Nectar of Devotion. One must worship the deity in the temple according to the regulative principles, offering arati and prasad, decorating the deity, etc. These things must be observed regularly. And then another one must offer arati at different times. Yes. Okay. Yeah, well, that's what I have in my notes. Next we'll go on to K, honoring Mahaprasadam. But it's not the usual Mahaprasadam. It's just different items which had been offered to the deities. Nirmalya refers to the garlands, flowers, chandan, bathwater, charnamrita, ghee lamp and tulsi leaves that the pujari has offered to the Lord during the puja. After the puja is completed, the devotee should accept these items on the head, saying, Jai Mahaprasad. Yeah, sure. So, flowers and garlands. One shouldn't disrespect the nirmalya. Nirmalya looks like it means like uncontaminated. Would you say? Nirmalya, something like that. You should not disrespect these things by stepping on them or keeping them in an unclean place. After being properly respected, nirmalya such as garlands and flowers can be collected and disposed in a river, a lake, or the ocean. That's the best thing. I'm not sure what we do here. I'm sure we must do something. Oh, there's a pot, a spot where you put the stuff. Okay. But otherwise, in a river, a lake, or the ocean is suitable. Devotees accept prasad flower garlands by touching them to the head, wearing them and smelling them. They accept prasad tulsi garlands simply by touching them to the head and smelling them, but not by wearing them. I mean, you could wear them, you know. But anyway, perhaps better not to. It's prasadam. Let's see. What now? So Charanamrita, we should take the Charanamrita. Oh, how's this? Hari Bhakti Vilas says, if you let one drop of Charanamrita fall on the ground, you must suffer 8 million sinful effects. Such as, well, drinking the bath water, the Charanamrita, is powerful enough to destroy the effects of 1 million sins, such as the killing of other living entities. But if you let one drop fall on the ground, then you'll suffer 8 million such things. I remember, again, back in the good old days, devotees would come, and if there was Charanamrita left over, and there might sometimes be, quite a bit, they would just go for it and drink it. And, there's a mantra. There are mantras for different things. We don't get so much into these mantras to some degree. But here's a mantra for Charanamrita. Sri Radhakrishna Padodakam Prema Bhakti Dam Muda Bhakti Bhavena Vai Pitva Shirasa Darayam Yaham. The water from the lotus feet of Shri Radha and Krishna bestows pure loving devotion to them. Having drunk that water with great joy and devotion, I hold that water upon my head. And then a little advice to avoid spillage. Keep your left hand under your right hand. Then, yes, the ghee lamp. So this is another part of, this is all paraphernalia, basically, of the deity worship. So, yes. We take the lamp first to Prabhupada, we do that. Then to the senior devotees. Of course, it can get a little sort of, extreme if you're trying to calculate the relative seniorities and going back and forth and back and around and over that way. But anyway, to observe in terms of seniority, in principle, is nice. Yeah. Okay. Oh, the deity's clothing. Oh, yes. Another type of nirmalya used as clothing from the deity. Deity clothing, which is distributed as prasad of the Lord, should be respected. We may respect prasad cloth by keeping it with other worshipable paraphernalia, or even by keeping it in a glass frame and hanging it on a wall like a painting or a photograph. Anyway, I've got, where's that bamboo or kusha grass? Just here? Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got this bamboo thing from the installation of Panchatattva, and I used it to awaken the senses of Lord Chaitanya in the Panchatattva. And then I kept it. And now it's in the frame there. So it's special. Best not to wear deity clothing. Keep it as something really special. And interesting experience I had in Tirupati, in the temple, the temple up on top of the hill. The devotees, local ISKCON devotees who know the people, and they're really part of the scene. They took us around and we got, like all this detailed tour of all the different features of the Tirupati temple, and there are different little rooms as you go around with different functions. And one room had the cloth of the deity. And before they put the cloth on the deity, at least some of the cloth, they soak it or somehow or other apply perfumed, like seriously perfumed oils. So we went into the room where they keep this cloth, and I just went in and looking around, yes, interesting. Suddenly, bang, in my face, wham. Not like it hurt, but it was just, it was a bit of a shock. It was this big cloth from Balaji, just full of scented oil, just like overpowering. And the fellow rubbed it in my face and everywhere. It was nice. Then the last point, this is the last point actually, anyway, in this part about temple worship, temple etiquettes, is that sometimes the pujaris may just distribute little bits of Mahaprasad. Yeah. And we can, even if we're in front of the deities, we can just immediately take it quickly. Yeah, but just and sort of try and step out of the way. So, okay, there you go, devotees. But let's carry on. There's a section here, now a whole separate section, other etiquette. It's sort of a continuation, I would say, more than anything, but they've separated it out here. Let me just access it and see what notes I have. Right, okay. So let's have a look here. Handling sacred items. Books, beads, cartels shouldn't be kept on the floor or in unclean places. It also includes, at least my interpretation or understanding, it also includes like song sheets, like books you may use for your notes in classes or that sort of thing. These are sacred. Yeah. And the floor is not the best, not so clean. You don't touch with your feet anything sacred. If you happen to pick it up, touch it to your head, whatever the thing was, maybe a book or something. And one should not step over books. One should not step over devotees. Prasadam, flowers that have been offered to the Lord, or over any sacred articles. But those things should be kept in a nice place. Yeah. Like kartals, mridanga, things like that. We should look after these things. Beads, books, tilak should not be taken into the bathroom. Pictures, sacred pictures, Krishna, the spiritual master, should be handled with care. Harinam chadars, same point. Yeah, if you get a Harinam chadar, don't wear it in such a way that it touches your feet. I can tell you a little Prabhupada story. Prabhupada was arriving in, if I remember correctly, San Diego, California. And in those days, it was really quite something. In London, it was the same. That almost whenever Prabhupada would arrive, they had to repaint the whole temple and just everything, the temple. Sometimes redo the curtains, and it was really quite something. So they did. Prabhupada was coming. So they redid so many things. And the one clever devotee, he had sort of memorized the Sanskrit alphabet. And so on the front steps, coming up into the temple building, off the road, he wrote in Sanskrit, painted in Sanskrit, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And when the devotees just redid everything and just prepared everything for Prabhupada to come, they were busy till the last minute, practically till he stepped out of the car. And then they just take everything around the back and just throw it out and go and meet Prabhupada. So Prabhupada got out of the car and came walking up, approaching the steps going into the front door of the building. And Prabhupada saw in Sanskrit, painted, the Hare Krishna mantra. And Srila Prabhupada said, "Oh, the Hare Krishna mantra, I cannot step over it." So you know what Prabhupada did, don't you? He walked around to the back, and there was everything, all the paint pots and brushes and brooms and the dirt and just everything. And he had to sort of fight his way through to get in. Yeah, And another time in London, before I joined, the devotees were given information when Prabhupada would fly in. But Prabhupada flew in early. And one devotee, his name was Sudajaya, he passed away. This one devotee, he was selling incense to shops, spiritual sky incense. And he had some customers, or a customer, in Heathrow Airport, one shop. So he went and visited the customer to see if they wanted more incense, came out of the shop, and there was Prabhupada with his, assistant and their bags, but no devotees from the temple, because they weren't expecting Prabhupada for some hours. So in those days, they didn't have cell phones. So what Sudajaya did, he asked Prabhupada, "Just wait a sec." But Prabhupada kept walking. He didn't really want to wait. And Sudajaya jumped into the payphone box, public telephone, and called the temple. And someone answered the phone. And Sudajaya said, "Prabhupada's coming." And the devotee said, "We know Prabhupada's coming." Bang. So he had to take Prabhupada in the spiritual sky van which smelt like so much agarbatti, you wouldn't believe it. Like literally tons of incense. It just reeked. And they drove back to the temple. Hare Krishna. Okay. Where are we? Well, when you're offering obeisances with your bead bag in one hand, your bead bag shouldn't touch the floor. We already discussed that, if you remember. Best to put it on something. Yeah. That's what we were told earlier. We should be careful in handling the deity's clothes, all their paraphernalia, etc. Anyway, you all pujaris, you know all about that. If you touch your hand to the floor or something unclean, you should wash your hand before touching the deity paraphernalia again. And yet Krishna's paraphernalia is non-different from him. And I have a little quotation here. It's an important one. What? Yeah, okay. There's a famous verse. Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnor aradhanam param Tasmat parataram devi Tadiyanam samarchanam, which is Lord Shiva speaking to Durga and saying, Aradhananam sarvesham, out of all types of worship, Vishnor aradhanam param, the worship of Lord Vishnu is supreme. Tasmat parataram devi, but, my dear Devi, Tadiyanam samarchanam, even higher than worshipping Lord Vishnu, is worshipping things. Worshipping Tadiya means things which are related to him, basically, like paraphernalia. Yeah. So in this category are included the devotees. Did you know that you are Tadiya? You are Tadiya, yes. You're part of the paraphernalia of the Lord. Yeah. And just the paraphernalia in general, it may be considered more worshipable than the Lord himself. And an interesting example of that is that certain sacred places are considered Tadiya. Radha Kund is considered Tadiya. It's related to the Lord, it's part of the Lord's paraphernalia, it's not different from the Lord. Yeah. Okay, let's see. We're moving along here, I'm happy to say. Let's see. Personal habits. Well, I think let's just stop here. Any comments or questions? Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.